My name is Fidela, and I'm 23 years old. I never imagined I'd be standing at a bus stop in my graduation gown while my classmates drove past with their families. For years, I watched my parents shower my younger sister Natalie with everything she wanted, while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. The day they bought her a brand new Tesla for her high school graduation, while I took public transportation to my college ceremony, was when I finally understood my place in our family. But that moment also helped me find my worth after years of being the invisible daughter. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt like the overlooked child in your family. Now, let me take you through my journey of being second best and how everything eventually came full circle. I grew up in Lexington, a picturesque upper middle class suburb of Boston, with tree lined streets and historic colonial homes. From the outside, we seemed like the perfect American family. My father, Michael, was a successful software engineer at a prominent tech company, and my mother, Diana, worked as a high end real estate agent, selling $1 million homes to executives and doctors. We lived in a spacious four-bedroom house with a manicured lawn and a swimming pool in the backyard, all the trappings of suburban success. My sister Natalie is 5 years younger than me. From the moment she was born, she seemed to capture everyone's attention. With her naturally blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and outgoing personality, she was the spitting image of my mother. Natalie was conventionally beautiful, athletic, and charismatic. Everything I wasn't. I was more introverted and studious with my father's darker features and quieter demeanor. I loved art books and quiet pursuits that didn't draw attention. In a family that valued visibility and social status, I was practically invisible. The pattern of favoritism started early, though. As a child, I didn't recognize it for what it was. I just knew something felt wrong. When I was 8 and Natalie was 3, she had a minor role in a dance recital. My parents invited our entire extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and took her out for an elaborate dinner afterward. 2 weeks later, I had my artwork displayed in a school exhibition where I won first place, but only my grandmother showed up. My parents were busy with one of Natalie's playdates. Your sister needs more support, my mother explained when I asked why they missed my art show. You're naturally good at school things. Natalie needs encouragement to build her confidence. This became the recurring theme of our childhood. Natalie needed support. Natalie needed attention. Natalie needed things. I was expected to understand and be mature about it. When Natalie turned 12, my parents completely remodeled her bedroom with custom furniture, a queen-sized bed and a personal TV. They'd already renovated it once when she was 8 because she wanted a big girl room. Meanwhile, my bedroom remained unchanged since I was 10, the same faded lavender walls and the twin bed that creaked when I turned over at night. Christmas mornings highlighted the disparity most clearly. I would unwrap practical gifts, school supplies, clothing items I needed, occasionally a book I'd mentioned months before. Natalie would squeal with delight at her pile of presents, the latest electronics designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and whatever was trendy that year. One Christmas, when I was 16 and Natalie was 11, she received a brand new iPhone designer Boots concert tickets and a shopping spree. I received a scientific calculator for my upcoming AP classes and a winter coat to replace my outgrown one. You're more practical, Fidela, my mother said when she noticed my expression. You don't care about frivolous things. The truth was I did care, not about the material items themselves, but about what they represented. Each gift disparity was a physical manifestation of how differently my parents valued us. I threw myself into academics thinking perhaps achievement would win their approval. I maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA, joined the debate team, edited the school newspaper, and volunteered at the local hospital. My room gradually filled with certificates, medals, and academic awards. External validation I desperately craved because I couldn't get it at home. When I brought home straight A's, my father would nod and say, "That's expected of you, Fidela." When Natalie brought home C's and B's, there would be celebrations and rewards for her improvement. When I won the state debate championship, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," before immediately turning the conversation to Natalie's upcoming soccer tournament. I developed coping mechanisms to deal with the constant feeling of inadequacy. I started journaling to process my emotions pouring onto paper, the words I could never say aloud. I cultivated deep friendships with classmates who appreciated my intelligence and dry humor. And I grew especially close to my grandmother, my father's mother, who seemed to be the only one who truly saw me. "You're extraordinary, Fidela," she would tell me during our weekly phone calls. "Some people shine so brightly inside that others don't always have the vision to see it." My grandmother was the one who took me shopping for my prom dress when my mother was busy helping Natalie prepare for a middle school dance. She was the one who sat front row at my high school graduation, when my parents arrived late because Natalie's dance rehearsal ran overtime. My high school graduation was a modest affair, dinner at a local restaurant with just our immediate family. My mother spent most of the meal discussing the elaborate plans she was already making for Natalie's graduation 4 years later. "We're thinking of a huge party at the country club," she said, not noticing how I pushed food around my plate. "Maybe even a trip to Europe as a graduation gift." I smiled and nodded, used to the dynamic, but still stung by it. Inside, I was already planning my escape. I received a substantial scholarship to attend Northwestern University in Chicago. It was far enough from Boston to give me breathing room, but prestigious enough that even my status-conscious parents couldn't object. The scholarship covered tuition, but not room and board or other expenses. "We could help more," my grandmother whispered when she slipped me a check before I left. "But your parents insist you need to learn financial responsibility." I later learned that they were simultaneously putting money into a car fund for Natalie's future graduation gift, even though she was just starting high school. At Northwestern, I experienced independence for the first time. I could be myself without constant comparison to Natalie. I made friends who knew me as Fidela, not as Natalie's quieter sister. I took classes that challenged and excited me, discovering a passion for business and marketing. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and another 10 as a research assistant to cover my living expenses. Despite the distance, the familiar patterns continued during phone calls home. Our Sunday conversations inevitably centered around Natalie, her social life, her cheerleading competitions, the boys who were interested in her. When I tried to share news about my internship application or research project, my mother would listen briefly before saying, "That's great, honey. Did I tell you about Natalie's homecoming dress?" The inequality in our treatment became even more apparent to me once I had some distance from it. At school, surrounded by people who valued me for my intelligence and work ethic, I began to see how abnormal my home situation was. My roommate Tara was shocked when I told her my parents expected me to work part-time while studying, but had already promised Natalie a car just for graduating high school. "That's messed up," she said bluntly. "You deserve better." During my sophomore year, I met Jackson in my marketing class. Tall, with thoughtful brown eyes and a quiet confidence, he came from a close-knit family in Michigan. After we started dating, he noticed patterns in my family dynamic that I had normalized. "It's strange how your parents rarely ask about your accomplishments," he observed after overhearing one of my phone calls home. "You're doing amazing things here." I was indeed achieving at a high level. I maintained my place on the dean's list every semester. I secured a competitive internship at a major marketing firm in Chicago. During my junior year, I co-authored a research paper with a professor that was published in a respected business journal. I was selected for a prestigious leadership program that accepted only 20 students from the entire university. Each achievement was met with the same lukewarm response from my parents. "That's nice, Fidela. Work hard and stay focused." Then the conversation would turn to Natalie's latest drama or accomplishment. Meanwhile, my sister's high school years were a study in mediocrity propped up by parental intervention. Her grades hovered around B- despite expensive tutors. She was popular, but constantly involved in social dramas that required my parents' emotional support and attention. They attended every football game to watch her cheer every school event where she might shine. When Natalie struggled in math, my father spent hours helping with her homework and hired a private tutor. When I mentioned difficulty with a complex economics concept, he said, "You'll figure it out, Fidela. You always do." During my junior year of college, at Jackson's gentle urging, I started seeing a therapist through the university's counseling center. Dr. Rivera helped me understand the family dynamic I'd been entangled in my entire life. "What you're describing sounds like a classic golden child/scapegoat dynamic," she explained. "In some families, one child is idealized while another is held to impossible standards or overlooked. It's not about anything you did or didn't do. It's a dysfunctional pattern established by the parents." Understanding the pattern didn't make it hurt less, but it helped me stop blaming myself. I wasn't less lovable or less worthy. I was just cast in a role that had nothing to do with my actual qualities or actions. With therapy supportive friends and Jackson's unwavering belief in me, I gradually developed confidence independent of my parents' approval. I built what Dr. Rivera called a chosen family of people who valued me for exactly who I was. I began to see my drive and self-reliance, qualities forced upon me by necessity, as strengths rather than burdens. By senior year, I had secured a job offer from a prestigious marketing firm in Seattle, set to start a month after graduation. I was proud of what I had accomplished largely on my own, and excited about the future I was building for myself. I allowed myself to hope that perhaps my graduation would finally be the moment my parents would see and celebrate my achievements. I was wrong. The weeks leading up to graduation were hectic with final exams, job paperwork, and apartment hunting in Seattle. I called my parents to discuss logistics for the ceremony. "We'll be there," my mother assured me, "but we might need to leave right after. Natalie has her final cheerleading competition that weekend, and we promised we'd be back for it." I swallowed my disappointment. What about transportation to the ceremony? The campus will be crowded. Could we take one car? My apartment was about 2 miles from the arena where graduation would be held. "Oh, we'll be coming straight from the hotel," my father said. "Why don't you just take the campus shuttle or an Uber?" I checked my bank account. After putting down the security deposit for my Seattle apartment, I was running low on funds. The shuttle would be fine, I said, not mentioning that it would mean leaving an hour earlier and potentially waiting in the hot sun in my graduation gown. "Perfect," my mother said brightly. "By the way, Natalie was nominated for prom queen. Isn't that exciting?" The day before graduation, I was packing my apartment when my phone buzzed with notifications. Friends were tagging me in congratulatory posts about completing college. I smiled as I scrolled through them, then froze when I saw a post from Natalie. It was a photo of her standing beside a gleaming white Tesla Model 3, a big red bow on the hood. She was holding up a key fob, her expression ecstatic. The caption read, "OMG, best surprise ever. Can't believe mom and dad got me my dream car just for making it through high school, hatcher blessed, had Tesla gang, had best parents ever." My parents were in the background of the photo, beaming with pride, my father's arm around my mother's shoulders as they watched Natalie celebrate. The timestamp showed it had been posted just 2 hours ago, when they were supposedly driving to Chicago for my college graduation. I sat heavily on my bed, the phone slipping from my fingers. They had bought my sister a Tesla, a car worth at least $50,000, for completing high school with mediocre grades. Meanwhile, I was taking the bus to my college graduation after 4 years of straight A's, working part-time, and securing a job at one of the top firms in the country. I called Jackson, my voice shaking as I told him what happened. "I'm not going," I said. "I can't face them knowing what they did." "Fidela," Jackson said firmly. "You're going to your graduation. Not for them, but for you. You've worked too hard to miss this moment. I'll pick you up myself." My friends rallied around me. Jackson, Tara, and my other roommate, Zoe, helped me finish packing and took me out for dinner, deliberately keeping the conversation away from my family. My grandmother called to tell me how proud she was, though she couldn't attend due to her health. "You've always been my brightest star, Fidela," she said, her voice warm through the phone. "Remember that tomorrow." Graduation day dawned sunny and warm. I put on the dress I had carefully selected weeks ago, a simple blue sheath that complemented my graduation gown. I did my makeup and fixed my hair, determined to look my best, despite the hollow feeling in my chest. Jackson picked me up as promised, presenting me with a beautiful corsage. "For the graduate," he said with a smile, "the most impressive person I know." At the arena, I joined the sea of graduates in black gowns and caps. I scanned the crowd for my parents but didn't see them. As we lined up alphabetically, I checked my phone. No messages. I walked across that stage with my head held high, accepting my diploma with honors cords draped around my shoulders. I heard Jackson and my friends cheering from the audience. When I looked up at the family section, I finally spotted my parents slipping into seats at the very back, Natalie trailing behind them, engrossed in her phone. They had missed me walking across the stage. After the ceremony, I found them outside. My mother hugged me quickly. Sorry we were late, honey. Natalie couldn't find her other shoe this morning, and then there was traffic. My father patted my shoulder. Congratulations, Fidela. We always knew you'd do well in school. We went to lunch at a restaurant near campus. I sat quietly as my parents dominated the conversation repeatedly, turning it to Natalie's upcoming prom and graduation. Natalie herself seemed oblivious to the tension, happily showing off her Tesla key fob to the waiter when he came to take our order. I just got it yesterday, she gushed. It drives like a dream. My parents beamed at her enthusiasm. Nothing but the best for our little star, my father said proudly. I picked at my food, feeling simultaneously present and invisible. Jackson squeezed my hand under the table, his presence anchoring me. The breaking point came when my mother's sister called to congratulate me. My mother put the phone on speaker. We're just glad one of our daughters has real star quality, my mother said, winking at Natalie. Fidela does well in school, but Natalie has that special something that opens doors. The restaurant seemed to go silent around me, though, logically, I knew the noise level hadn't changed. Something inside me shifted. A lifetime of acceptance and quiet resentment crystallizing into clarity and resolve. I placed my napkin on the table and looked directly at my parents. I've been waiting my entire life for you to see me, I said, my voice calm, despite the emotion churning inside. Not just see what I could do for you, or how I could make you look good, or how I could take care of myself so you could focus on Natalie. Just see me as a daughter you value. My mother's smile faltered. Fidela, don't be dramatic. Of course we value you. Do you? I asked. You were late to my college graduation because Natalie couldn't find a shoe. You made me take the bus here while buying her a Tesla for doing the bare minimum. You've never attended any of my academic ceremonies or celebrations, but you rearrange your lives for her cheerleading competitions. My father frowned. We've always supported your education. No, I said. You've expected my education. You've expected my achievements. You've expected me to be self-sufficient and understand why Natalie gets everything while I get nothing. You've expected me to accept being an afterthought in my own family. Natalie looked up from her phone, seemingly noticing the tension for the first time. What's going on? I stood up, gathering my purse. I've achieved everything I have despite how you've treated me, not because of it. And I'm done pretending that's normal or acceptable. Where are you going? My mother demanded, her face flushing. We're in the middle of your graduation lunch. No, I said. You're in the middle of talking about Natalie as usual. I'm going to celebrate with people who actually see me. Jackson stood beside me, his presence solid and supportive. Don't be ridiculous, my father said. How will you get back to your apartment? I smiled thinly. The same way I got to graduation. Public transportation. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, refusing the offer of a ride in Natalie's new Tesla. It was the first time in my life I had openly acknowledged the dysfunctional dynamic in our family, and though my heart was racing, I also felt strangely liberated. The week after graduation was a blur of emotions. I alternated between crying jags and periods of strange, peaceful clarity. Jackson and my friends created a protective circle around me, helping me finish packing and prepare for my move to Seattle. My mother called multiple times, but her messages focused on how I had embarrassed the family at the restaurant, not on addressing the substance of what I had said. My father sent a terse text, "When you're ready to be reasonable, we can talk." I didn't respond to either of them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't immediately trying to smooth things over or make them comfortable at my own expense. Then came the call that changed everything. A job offer from Preston and Marsh, one of the top marketing firms in Seattle. They wanted me to start in 3 weeks with a salary that exceeded my expectations and a signing bonus that would cover my moving expenses. This tangible validation of my worth and abilities cemented my decision to create distance between myself and my family. I called my parents to inform them rather than ask permission, another first. I've accepted a job in Seattle, I said when my mother answered. I'm moving next week. There was a pause. Seattle. But that's so far away. Why would you want to go there? Because it's an excellent opportunity, I replied, and because I need space to figure out who I am outside of this family dynamic. What dynamic? My mother asked, her voice rising. I don't understand why you're suddenly being so difficult, Fidela. Is this because of Natalie's car? We would have bought you one too if you'd needed it for school. That was the moment I realized they truly didn't see it. The years of differential treatment, the consistent prioritizing of Natalie, the constant dismissal of my achievements, none of it registered to them as problematic. This isn't about the car, I said quietly. It's about a lifetime of feeling invisible in my own family. It's about working twice as hard for half the recognition. It's about never being enough despite doing everything right. That's ridiculous, my father said, having picked up another extension. We've always been proud of you. Being proud of me and valuing me are different things, I replied. I can count on one hand the times you've shown up for me the way you consistently show up for Natalie. What followed was a difficult conversation where I finally expressed years of accumulated hurt. I listed concrete examples, missed art shows and debate competitions, dismissive comments about my achievements, the stark contrast in how they celebrated our milestones. My parents responded with defensive justifications and accusations that I was jealous of my sister. Natalie needs more support, my mother insisted. You've always been so independent. I became independent because I had to, I countered, not because that's who I naturally am. The conversation ended unresolved with my parents unable or unwilling to acknowledge their role in creating the family dynamic. But I felt lighter having finally spoken my truth, even if they couldn't hear it. My grandmother, in contrast, fully supported my decision. Sometimes distance is the only way to find perspective, she said during our weekly call. You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Perhaps now you can focus on giving that love to yourself. The week before my move was spent packing up my childhood bedroom. Each item I sorted brought memories, trophies, and certificates. My parents had never displayed journals filled with longing for their approval photos, where I smiled brightly despite feeling overlooked. I packed only what truly mattered to me, donating or discarding the rest. It felt symbolic, keeping only what served my new life, and leaving behind the weight of old expectations. Natalie knocked on my door one evening while I was boxing up books. Are you really moving to Seattle? She asked, looking younger than her 18 years. Yes, I said, continuing to wrap books in newspaper. I start my new job soon. She sat on my bed fidgeting with her Tesla key fob, a habit she'd developed since receiving the car. Is it because of me Mom and Dad said you're jealous of my car and stuff? I put down the book I was holding and turned to face her. Despite everything, I didn't blame Natalie for our parents' behavior. She was as much a product of their dysfunction as I was, just from the other side. It's not because of you, I said honestly. It's about a pattern in our family that isn't healthy for me. You didn't create that pattern. What pattern? She asked, echoing our mother. I considered how to explain it in terms she might understand. Have you noticed that Mom and Dad drop everything for your activities but rarely show up for mine? Or that they celebrate your B- but barely acknowledge my A+? That's the pattern. And it's been happening our whole lives. Natalie looked thoughtful, perhaps really considering our family dynamic for the first time. I always thought it was because you were the smart one who had everything together. You didn't seem to need their attention the way I did. Everyone needs to feel valued by their parents, Nat, I said gently. Being self-sufficient doesn't mean I don't want their support. She was quiet for a moment. I didn't know you felt that way. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, I repeated. But I need to build a life where I'm not constantly fighting for basic recognition. She nodded slowly. Will you still talk to me sometimes, even if you're mad at Mom and Dad? Despite everything, I felt a surge of affection for my sister. She was a product of our parents' favoritism just as much as I was. Of course I will. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about taking care of myself. The night before I left, my parents insisted on a family dinner. It was tense and awkward with surface-level conversation and underlying currents of unresolved conflict. My mother made a show of serving my favorite dessert, the first time she'd done so in years. But the gesture felt too little too late. When I hugged them goodbye the next morning, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I was mourning the relationship we should have had while embracing the freedom to define myself on my own terms. As my flight took off, carrying me away from Boston toward my new life in Seattle, I felt lighter than I had in years. The distance wasn't just geographical, it was emotional, a necessary space in which I could finally grow without the shadow of constant comparison. Seattle welcomed me with its stunning combination of urban energy and natural beauty. My apartment was small, but mine alone, the first space that was truly my own. From my window, I could see glimpses of Puget Sound between buildings, a constant reminder of how far I'd come from the suburbs of Boston. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of orientation at Preston and Marsh, setting up my apartment and exploring my new city. I threw myself into work, eager to prove myself in a professional environment. The long hours and learning curve kept me too busy to dwell on family matters, which was exactly what I needed. I made new friends gradually. First, work colleagues who invited me to happy hours, then neighbors in my apartment building, and eventually a wider circle through community events and classes. Without the weight of family expectations, I discovered sides of myself I hadn't known existed. I took an improv comedy class, something I would never have considered in the past. I joined a hiking group and found joy in challenging my body as well as my mind. Jackson and I maintained our relationship long distance with frequent video calls and visits whenever possible. 6 months after my move, he was offered a position at an architectural firm in Portland, close enough to Seattle that we could see each other on weekends while still pursuing our individual careers. The distance from my family brought both clarity and healing. I maintained minimal contact, brief calls on holidays, and occasional text messages. My mother's attempts to engage always centered around Natalie's activities or complaints about my absence. My father remained stiffly formal, as if unsure how to relate to me without the familiar dynamic. My sister surprisingly made the most genuine effort to maintain a connection. Her texts were awkward but sincere, asking about my job and my new city. She shared updates about her college plans without the bragging tone our parents had always encouraged. Meanwhile, I was thriving professionally. My analytical mind and strong work ethic caught the attention of senior management at Preston and Marsh. Within 6 months, I was assigned to work with higher-profile clients. My ideas and brainstorming sessions were increasingly implemented, and my first solo campaign exceeded performance metrics by 40%. At my one-year review, my supervisor Sarah praised my contributions and presented me with an unexpected promotion to project lead on a major account. The salary increase and added responsibility reflected a level of professional recognition I had never received from my family. "You have a unique ability to see patterns and opportunities others miss," Sarah told me. "Your combination of analytical thinking and creative insight is rare and valuable." Her words, recognizing specifically what made me valuable, were a healing balm to years of feeling overlooked. In the professional world, my qualities were assets, not reasons to be sidelined. With the promotion came increased industry visibility. I was invited to speak at marketing conferences and contribute to professional publications. A profile of me in a regional business magazine described me as a rising star in digital marketing strategy. I didn't send the article to my parents, but my grandmother proudly displayed it on her refrigerator. As my professional reputation grew, my personal healing continued through regular therapy sessions. Dr. Patel, my new therapist in Seattle, helped me establish healthier boundaries and develop a stronger sense of self-worth, independent of external validation. "The pattern in your family taught you that your value was conditional on achievement," she explained during one session. "But worth is inherent, not earned. You are valuable simply because you exist, not because of what you accomplish." It was a concept that took time to truly internalize after years of believing the opposite. The holidays were particularly challenging. During my first Thanksgiving in Seattle, I accepted a colleague's invitation rather than returning to Boston. When I called my parents that evening, the conversation revolved around Natalie's college adjustment issues and complaints that I hadn't come home. "Natalie misses you," my mother said, as if that should automatically override my own needs and boundaries. Christmas was similar. I flew home for 3 days, the minimum I felt I could manage without causing a complete family rupture. The familiar patterns emerged immediately, with Natalie still receiving the lion's share of attention and gifts, despite being a legal adult. What was different was my reaction. Where once I had felt hurt and resentful, I now felt a kind of detached compassion. I could see the dynamic clearly for what it was, a dysfunctional pattern that had nothing to do with my worth as a person. During that visit, I learned that Natalie had changed her major for the second time and was struggling academically. My parents were hiring tutors and meeting with academic advisors, investing the same intensive support they'd always given her. I also learned through oblique comments and overheard conversations that my sister's Tesla had developed issues she couldn't afford to fix on her limited college student budget. My parents were covering the expensive repairs, rather than encouraging her to find transportation within her means. A year after my graduation, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed. I had built a life I was proud of with work that challenged me, relationships that nourished me, and a growing sense of self-worth that didn't depend on others' approval. The pain of my family dynamic hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed from an acute wound to a dull ache, present but no longer debilitating. I smiled at the memory of standing at that bus stop in my graduation gown, feeling humiliated and overlooked. If I could speak to that version of myself, I would tell her that the journey ahead, though difficult, would lead to freedom she couldn't yet imagine. The shift in family dynamics began unexpectedly 2 years after my move to Seattle. I had just won the Emerging Talent Award from the American Marketing Association, a significant industry recognition for professionals under 30. The award ceremony in Chicago was attended by representatives from major companies across the country. Among those companies was Westridge Technologies, my father's employer for the past 15 years. I knew they were a client of Preston and Marsh, but I hadn't been assigned to their account. That changed the week after the award ceremony, when my supervisor called me into her office. Westridge is looking to acquire a smaller tech firm that specializes in educational software, Sarah explained. They want us to handle the rebranding and marketing strategy post-acquisition. I'm putting you in charge of the project. I accepted the assignment without mentioning my personal connection. It was a major opportunity that could further elevate my professional standing, and I wasn't going to let family complications interfere. 2 weeks later, I led a team into the first client meeting at Westridge's Boston headquarters. I had prepared extensively, analyzing market positioning and developing preliminary strategy recommendations. I felt confident and completely in my element as we were shown into the conference room. The shock on my father's face when he entered and saw me at the head of the table was something I'll never forget. He stopped mid-stride, his professional smile faltering. "Fidela," he said, confusion evident in his tone. "What are you doing here?" I extended my hand professionally. "I'm the project lead from Preston and Marsh for your acquisition marketing strategy. It's good to see you, Mr. Anderson." The formality of my greeting seemed to jolt him back to awareness of our surroundings. He shook my hand, then took his seat among the other Westridge executives. Throughout the presentation, I could feel his eyes on me as I confidently led the discussion, fielded questions, and demonstrated my expertise. The other executives nodded appreciatively at my insights and strategic approach. After the meeting, several Westridge team members complimented my presentation and expressed enthusiasm about working together. My father lingered until we were alone in the conference room. "You never mentioned you were working with Westridge," he said. "I was just assigned to the account," I replied. "I didn't see a reason to mention it." He nodded slowly, studying me with new eyes. "You were impressive today." "Very professional." It was perhaps the most genuine compliment he had ever given me, untainted by comparison to Natalie or qualified with expectations. I thanked him simply and gathered my materials to leave. "Your mother saw an article about your award," he added as I reached the door, "in the business journal." I paused, surprised they had seen it. It was unexpected but appreciated recognition. "We didn't realize," he began, then stopped. "Your company bio mentions your other accomplishments too. The campaigns you've led, the clients you've brought in. You've done very well for yourself." There was a note of something in his voice I hadn't heard before. Perhaps respect, perhaps regret. I simply nodded and wished him a good day, maintaining the professional boundary that now felt more comfortable than any attempt at father-daughter intimacy. That evening, my mother called, the first time she had initiated contact for something other than a holiday or family obligation in years. "Your father told me about the meeting today," she said. "He was very impressed with your presentation." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for the conversation to turn to Natalie as it inevitably did. But surprisingly, it didn't. Instead, my mother asked tentative questions about my work, my apartment, my life in Seattle. She seemed genuinely interested, if awkward, in her attempts to connect. Near the end of the call, she mentioned something that explained the sudden interest. Things have been a bit difficult here lately. Your father's company is going through some changes. There have been layoffs. Is his position affected? I asked, professional knowledge immediately kicking in. The acquisition Westridge was pursuing was likely a defensive move in a challenging market. He's not sure yet, she admitted. And my real estate business has been slow with the housing market cooling. We've had to cut back on some expenses. I made appropriate sympathetic noises, but internally, I wondered if their financial concerns were the only reason for this newfound interest in my career. The timing seemed suspicious. My suspicions were confirmed a week later, when my mother called again, this time with news about Natalie. "Your sister's having a difficult time," she said, her voice tense. "She's changed majors again. That's the third time. The university is saying she might not have enough credits to graduate on time. And there's been an issue with her car." "What kind of issue?" I asked. "The bank is threatening repossession," she admitted. "We co-signed for the loan, but with the payments so high and our current situation, we've been helping her make payments, but we can't keep doing that." I felt a surge of complicated emotions: sympathy for my sister's predicament, frustration that my parents had set her up for failure by never teaching her financial responsibility, and a small petty part of me that felt vindicated that their favoritism had finally shown consequences. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "It sounds like a challenging situation." There was a pause. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out, just temporarily. With your new promotion and award, we thought perhaps you could assist with Natalie's car payments until we get back on our feet." And there it was, the real reason for the sudden interest in my career success. Not pride in my accomplishments, but calculation of what I could provide. "I don't think that would be appropriate," I said carefully. "Natalie needs to learn financial responsibility, and bailing her out won't help with that. Perhaps she could sell the Tesla and get a more affordable vehicle." My mother's tone immediately chilled. "I can't believe you won't help your own sister, after everything we've done for you." The irony of her statement was so profound I nearly laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Because from where I'm standing, I've built my career and my life with minimal support from either of you." The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with my mother in tears and me feeling drained but resolved. I would not be drawn back into the dysfunctional patterns of the past, even if financial circumstances had temporarily shifted the family power dynamic. Over the next few months, I learned through occasional calls with Natalie that significant changes were happening in our family. My father's position at Westridge had indeed been eliminated in a restructuring, though he had been offered a much lower-level role that he reluctantly accepted. My mother had to sell her luxury car and designer items to help cover expenses. Natalie's Tesla was repossessed, and she was now taking the bus to her classes, an irony not lost on me. Most surprisingly, Natalie seemed to be growing from the experience. She had taken a part-time job at a campus coffee shop, her first real employment. She was learning to budget and live within limited means. In our conversations, she sounded more grounded and less entitled than she had in the past. "I never realized how much Mom and Dad protected me from reality," she admitted during one call. "I had no idea how to manage money or handle disappointment. I'm kind of glad the Tesla is gone. It was too much pressure." My parents reached out again several months later, their tone markedly different. My father spoke about his humbling experience of starting over at a lower level in his career. My mother mentioned selling many of her status symbols and realizing how much of her identity had been tied to appearances. "We've been doing some thinking," my father said during a call, "about what you said before you left, about never feeling valued in our family. We didn't see it then, but looking back, there was truth to what you said." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of their behavior or its impact on me, but it was a start. The first crack in the wall of denial they had maintained for years. "We're seeing a family therapist," my mother added. "It's been illuminating. I maintained my boundaries while offering emotional support as they navigated their reduced circumstances. I suggested resources for job hunting and budgeting, but declined further requests for financial assistance beyond a small loan to Natalie for her textbooks, a loan with clear repayment terms that she was honoring diligently. The family dynamic was rebalancing not through my intervention or vindictiveness, but through natural consequences. The patterns that had seemed immutable for decades were shifting, creating space for new, potentially healthier relationships. I felt no schadenfreude at my parents' struggles, only a quiet acknowledgement that life has its own way of bringing balance eventually. The sister who had been given everything without earning it was now learning valuable lessons about self-reliance. The parents who had overlooked my achievements were now seeing their true value from the outside. And I, the daughter who had never felt good enough, was standing firmly in my worth, able to offer compassion without compromising my boundaries. 3 years after my graduation bus ride, I stood in my Seattle apartment looking out at the skyline, reflecting on how far I'd come. I was now a senior account director at Preston and Marsh, managing a team of 12 and overseeing campaigns for some of our largest clients. Jackson had relocated to Seattle 6 months earlier, and we were engaged planning a small wedding for the following spring. My relationship with my family had evolved into something I never could have imagined during those painful early years. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, and old patterns occasionally resurfaced. But there was a fundamental shift in the dynamic that made authentic connection possible. My parents had embraced a simpler lifestyle, selling their large house for a modest condo and adjusting to a significantly reduced income. The financial necessity had stripped away many of the status symbols and social pretensions that had driven their behavior in the past. In their place was a growing, if sometimes awkward, authenticity. After several months of family therapy, my mother had called me for a conversation unlike any we'd had before. "I need to apologize to you, Fidela," she had said, her voice trembling. "Truly apologize, not just make excuses. The way we treated you compared to Natalie was wrong. We put unreasonable expectations on you while sheltering her from consequences. We celebrated her minor achievements while taking your major ones for granted. And when you tried to tell us how it affected you, we dismissed your feelings." I had been silent tears streaming down my face at the validation I had sought for so long. "I can't change the past," she continued, "but I want you to know that I see it now. I see the hurt we caused, and I'm so, so sorry." My father's apology came later in his own way. During a visit to Seattle, he had asked to see my office. As we stood in the reception area of Preston and Marsh looking at the wall where employee achievements were displayed, he had spotted my award plaques and framed article features. "You built all this yourself," he said quietly, "without our help, despite our lack of support." He turned to face me, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I always thought I was preparing you for the real world by expecting excellence and independence. I told myself it was good parenting. But the truth is, I was harder on you because it was easier than being the father you deserved. I'm proud of who you've become, Fidela. Not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you are. Your strength, your integrity, your compassion, even toward us who didn't earn it." These moments of recognition and genuine remorse helped heal wounds I had carried for decades. They didn't erase the past, but they created possibility for a different future. Natalie had perhaps undergone the most dramatic transformation. After her Tesla was repossessed, and our parents could no longer shield her from consequences, she had initially floundered, but gradually she found her footing. She switched her major to education, a field she genuinely cared about, and applied herself with newfound determination. She worked part-time throughout college and graduated with modest but earned honors. Most surprisingly, she and I had developed a real sisterly relationship for the first time. Without our parents' comparative dynamic driving us apart, we discovered genuine points of connection and mutual respect. She admired my career success and independence. I appreciated her emotional intelligence and the personal growth she had shown. "You know what's weird," she said during her most recent visit to Seattle. "I used to feel sorry for you because Mom and Dad were so much harder on you. But now I feel sorry for myself back then. They never believed I could handle challenges, so I never learned how until I was forced to. You're the lucky one in a way. Family gatherings, once a source of stress and pain for me, had become tentatively enjoyable. During the previous Christmas, the first one I had hosted in Seattle, I watched my parents interact with Jackson's family with none of the status anxiety that would have dominated such an encounter in the past. They seemed genuinely interested in connecting rather than impressing. As I planned my wedding, my mother offered suggestions, but accepted my decisions without the controlling behavior that had once characterized her involvement in family events. When I chose a simple, intimate ceremony over the elaborate social event she would have preferred, in the past, she simply said, "It sounds perfect for you and Jackson." The most profound change, though, was within myself. The constant need for validation that had driven me for so long had been replaced by a quiet confidence in my own worth. I no longer measured my value by achievements or others' approval. I had learned that my worth was inherent, not earned, a lesson I wished I could have learned without so much pain, but one I now held as a core truth. Standing at that bus stop in my graduation gown had felt like a moment of ultimate humiliation. In retrospect, it was the catalyst for my liberation, the moment when the disparity in how I was valued became so glaring that I could no longer deny or accommodate it. That painful day had set me on a path to authentic selfhood and genuine connection. I had learned that sometimes being overlooked is the best thing that can happen to you. It forces you to see yourself clearly, to find your own worth, rather than seeking it from others. It teaches you self-reliance and resilience, and eventually it leads you to people who truly see and value you for exactly who you are. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of profound loneliness, of questioning my decisions, of grieving the family relationship I had always wanted but never had. But those challenges had shaped me into someone stronger and more compassionate than I might otherwise have become. As I prepared for my wedding, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated my happiness, I felt grateful for the path that had led me here, bus ride and all. Have you ever felt like the overlooked child in your family? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your worth, even when others don't see it. And share this video with someone who might need to know they're not alone in these feelings. Thank you for listening, and remember, your value isn't determined by others' ability to see it. You are enough exactly as you are.